All right, so welcome back to the channel. This is going to be the first episode in the How to Brew series that I'm creating. So I just want to do a little quick introduction. If you have never seen me before, my name's Steve. Been home brewing for about 25 years. So we're going to get into how the home brewing is done. This is basically going to be extract brewing process. And then we will get into other processes later on. So let's get going. Let's make some beer, or at least show you how to do it. So I'm going to get into a little bit about what you need for your brewing. Especially beginner brewers, you're going to be doing, most likely you're going to do extract brewing. You're not going to go into the whole all grain for a little while. So some of the basics that you need, you're going to need your fermentation bucket. This is going to be a food grade bucket. You'll see a picture of it over here. Get them at Lowe's, Home Depot. Just make sure it's food grade and not the orange or the blue ones that they sell that are just normal buckets. Also get a lid. They come with them. Actually, they don't come with them. You got to buy them separate. They're actually two different purchases. So when you get that, you're going to want to end up putting in and I get a couple of them because you're going to use them for a bunch of things. But I'd get maybe 3 or 4. They're not that expensive. You can go online. You can get the spouts. It's just like a valve spout. You could get a tapered drill bit. This is one right here. We'll show it over here. It's a little easier to see. There. So, and these, they'll go right through the plastic real easy. Just make sure you do it to the right level or the right gauge here for the size, diameter. Then you're also going to want to put a hole in the top, and that's going to be for your airlock. Also, again, I've got some pictures of airlocks here. You can get any of these things at a homebrew store if you have one locally, and then you can go online. There's 100 places. I'm going to throw some links down below, some of the places that I use for online purchases. And then there's always Amazon. I have noticed that with Amazon, though, considering you're getting Prime delivery, they end up being a little bit more expensive. There's a bunch of online shops. More beer, if you order, don't quote me on this, I think it's over $25 worth of supplies. The shipping is free. There's a few exceptions on that, and go online, look at it. But if you end up buying bulk grain, like a 50-pound bag of, 2-row, they're going to charge you on the shipping on that. That's a heavy item. But if you're ordering just specialty grains and maybe you're getting only half a pound, 2 pounds of those specialty grains at a time, they usually will box them, and then they will also be part of that free shipping if you reach that monetary threshold. So after you get your bucket, you're going to want to have a good kettle. You don't need a large kettle for extract brewing. So I believe my kettle, this is, and it's got some use, but it holds roughly 3 gallons. When you're brewing extract, you typically are not brewing 5 gallons on the stove. You're usually steeping your specialty grains, and you'll steep them in the hot water. Get a good thermometer, because you are going to hold the temperature at a certain temp. Like we'll say 152 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to steep your grains in there, and then you're going to have to hold that temperature for a good while. And then when you get into after the steeping, then you're going to raise it to boil, and then you're going to add your malt extract. There's 2 types. You can get the liquid malt extract, looks like maple syrup, and then there's dry malt extract, DME. You can use either one of those. There's a number of different types of malt extract that are used with different base malts. So you can look those up. The best thing to do especially you new beginners, is go out and you're going to want to get a starter's kit. And a lot of these online places, they have already pre-packaged beer kits. So it's going to come with all the specialty grains that you're going to need. It's going to come with the malt extract that you're going to be using. It's also going to be coming with the hops that you're going to use, and also the yeast. What it's not going to contain, it's not going to contain the yeast nutrient, which is something you're going to want to add before you put it in the fermenter, which is going to be your 5-gallon pail. And then also it's called finings, and there's different types. There's Rorflock Tabbets, there's Irish Moss, there's a bunch of different types of finings. And what that does is help with the clarity of the beer. So during the fermentation process, it'll help clarify the beer. You can also add finings at the end of fermentation, like gelatin and biofine. You can add them at the end. You can add them actually in the kegging process. Beginner brewers you're going to be bottling, so you're going to probably add them at the end of your fermentation during cold crash. I interrupt this video to give you some breaking news. In the part where I was talking about boiling the wort on the stove, and it's approximately 3 gallons, when you fill the fermenter with those 3 or so gallons, you're going to top it off with tap water to get your 5-gallon volume. I didn't put that in the video anywhere, and I just wanted to add that real quick. Now back to your program. New brewers, you're probably going to start with ales. Ales will ferment at about room temperature. So you're going to ferment around 68 degrees, 65, 70, depending on the yeast strain. But if you're going to end up doing lagers, you're going to need something to have temperature control. And what a lot of people do is they'll use an old refrigerator or a freezer that you hook up a inkbird to, and an inkbird is what will control the temperature. You'll have a temperature probe. You put it inside the freezer. You set the temperature on the inkbird. You plug the freezer into the inkbird, and then the inkbird plugs into the wall. So when it reaches that temperature, it'll shut off, and then when it needs to cool again, it'll turn back on. So it's almost operating your freezer as a refrigerator. Those are the things that you're probably going to do down the road. There's a lot of other things. A lot of Keyser builds, you can go online and look for those in fermentation freezers. A lot of different little things they'll do to freezers to accommodate different types or different sizes of fermenters. Okay, so some more of the equipment that you're going to need. A hydrometer. And what a hydrometer does, as you can see here, this is the hydrometer itself. And what this does is it measures the specific gravity of the liquid. So what you're going to do is prior to fermentation, you're going to take your gravity reading. So you're going to fill this up. This is rated for 60 degrees. So you're going to want your wort to be at 60 degrees. And then this is going to give you a number. So for an example, you'll get a number of 1.040. At the end of fermentation, when fermentation is completed, then you're going to take another gravity reading. So again, you're going to fill this up. It's going to float inside the liquid. It's going to bob up and down. And then it's going to be somewhere around the 1.010 plus or minus. That's usually where your beers will finish out. And then you can calculate with a formula on what the actual ABV or alcohol volume or alcohol is in that. This is a grain bag, and this is what you'll use for your specialty grains. You're actually going to put your grains in here. Then you're going to steep them in that hot water that we talked about. And that goes based on the recipe. I haven't done extract in quite a while, so I'm not exactly sure how long you're going to steep these grains. Probably about 30 to 60 minutes, because that's typically how long a mash is going to be. You're also going to need... I would get also a good funnel, fairly large funnel, but works really well, especially if you're using carboys to ferment your beer. I don't recommend it. Carboys are sort of the old-fashioned way, those big glass 5-gallon, 6-gallon glass carboys. I would go with the bucket, the food-grade buckets or pails. Bottles, this is a 22-ounce bottle. These you can get online, get them at the homebrew stores. Best way to do it is save the bottles that you drink beer out of when you go to the store and buy beer. but make sure it's pop tops. The screw top twist off caps will not work. So you got to make sure it's one of the ones you take off with a bottle opener. And then you're going to need bottle caps. And you're going to need a bottle capper. This is a bottle capper right here. What you do is you'll put your bottle cap on top of here. You put this on, and then you pull both the levers down, and then it'll end up capping the bottle. There's different types of these. This is like, I don't know, I guess we'll call it a butterfly capper. But there's other bench top ones that you actually just set the bottle down and then you pull a lever and it'll cap it. There's all different types. I've had this for almost 25 years. This is the first one I ever bought, and when I started brewing about 25 years ago, still the same one I'm using now. I'm not going to actually demonstrate how to extract brew. But the process, as I explained, is you steep your specialty grains, then you bring that to a boil. You're going to then add your malt extract, and then you're going to follow the recipe for your hop additions. Typically, you're going to add your first addition of hops at 60 minutes if you're doing a 60-minute boil for bittering purposes. And then periodically, either maybe 15 minutes left in the boil, 20 minutes left in the boil, 30 minutes left in the boil, a minute left in the boil. It depends on the recipe, what your type of beer you're making. You're going to add other hops at that point. And then those kits that you end up getting will give you the directions on when you're supposed to add those hops and how much. I don't remember if the hops will actually come weighed out in those kits, or if they're going to send you an ounce of hops, but you may not use the full ounce. Again, picture here of scales. You're going to probably want to get at least one scale for weighing out your hops, which is that small one that you see up there in the corner. But also I have a large scale, and I think it's a postal scale, but it will weigh up to 55 pounds. So it's good for when you're weighing out your grain, especially when you get into the all grain thing. Also, when you do order these kits, or if you end up just trying to make up your own recipe and then ordering the ingredients yourself online or going to a homebrew store, make sure you get it milled. You're not going to, at this point, go out and buy yourself a mill to mill your own grain. That's something you're going to do down the road when you start doing all grain. But you don't need to get that milled. You got to have those husks on that barley cracked open so it's exposing that starch so you can convert that starch to sugar. As I get back to the pails, and I'm talking to bucket pails, not your friend, make sure you get a couple of them, because you're going to want to use one for the fermentation purpose. And you're also going to want to use one that you can bottle from. So sometimes what people will do is they'll actually remove the fermented beer into another pail. If you're bottling, a lot of times you will mix corn sugar in that other pail with the beer that you just put in there, and that corn sugar is going to be used to carbonate the beer once it's been bottled. That's typically the way that when you bottle beer is how you're going to do it. You're going to add corn sugar to the beer itself. Once it's capped in that bottle, some of the yeast that's still active is going to start eating that sugar, and then it creates carbon dioxide, and then you get your fuzzy beer head. We'll talk about kegging and CO2 carbonating. We'll talk about that at another time. Airlock, right here. You're going to need an airlock, and this is to prevent anything to get into your fermentation vessel, but it allows the CO2 to escape. You need to obviously exhaust that CO2. If you don't have a way of getting that CO2 to exhaust, you're going to end up finding out that your bucket just blew up down in your basement. Also, be very careful when you're doing the corn sugar for the for the carbonation of your beer bottles. Too much sugar is going to create too much carbon dioxide, and again, you're going to have bottle caps flying around and beer foaming and flowing all over the place in the basement. So make sure you follow those instructions very accurately, because a little bit too much sugar is going to create that mess. There's also sugar tabs. I think they call them carbonation drops. I'll throw a picture up here of what I've used. I actually have a bottling video that we'll get into also, and I'm going to post that again and attach it to one of these videos. But those there's directions in the back on how many of those tablets you're supposed to add per bottle. If you're using these 22-ounce bottles like I have, you add 2. If you're using a 12 to 16-ounce bottle, then you use 1. You're going to want cleaner. You're definitely going to need something to sanitize your bottles. You can put them through the dishwasher. A lot of, I'm going to say modern dishwashers, but I'm sure they've been modern for like 15 years. But there's like a sanitation button or a sterilize button on your dishwasher. Put those in, the bottles in upside down so they're pointing down, and you can sanitize that way. Or you can get PPW, which I got here. There's also some people, I used to use a bleach solution. So it would be bleach and water. Not the most recommended way of doing it. I would use PPW. That's what I use for all my cleaning purposes. And I would also get Star San. Star San is going to sanitize your bottle, but you're going to want to use that to clean your fermenter, or excuse me, use PPW to clean your fermenter, but then also use the Star San to sanitize the fermenter. Make sure everything is clean. You got to be, after the boil, everything has to be clean. It has to be sterile, it has to be sanitized. Anything that comes in contact with yeast can contaminate it, and you want to make sure that there's no bacteria or anything that can contaminate that yeast that would kill it, or maybe produce off flavors in your beer. So you're going to want to get a siphon. Here's a siphon. And all it does is just goes in the bottom of the bucket. You pump this, and it creates a vacuum, and then it'll come out this end. Typically, you're going to end up attaching a hose to this. So it'll attach on the end of here, and then it'll go into your pail. And then you can fill up your pail that way. And if you don't have the spout at the bottom, and sometimes you're going to have a lot of yeast sediment and hop sediment at the bottom, which is trub. That'll be at the bottom, and sometimes you'll end up sucking that out if you're using the spigot. And this sits up above the bottom. It's got a little knob at the end, and then the liquid actually comes in up here. So it's not pulling directly from the bottom of this. And so it eliminates, at least most of the time, it'll eliminate a majority of that trub. Once you get your bottles, your beer bottled, you're going to want to put it in still keep it in a relatively warm area, 68 degrees or so, in a dark area. So when you're either in a closet, or if it's not inside of the cardboard case that you typically will get with beer bottles, especially if you order them. If you order them, they're going to come in a box, so you just put them right back in there. They got dividers in there. But if you're using beer bottles that you've collected just from beers that you've drank, then you're going to have to put them in something, keep them dark, and keep them in relatively warm. Same with your fermenter. When you're fermenting your beer, make sure it stays in a warm area, but it's got to be a dark area too. You don't UV lights. You don't want to have your beer exposed to UV lights. Your beer bottle, always store them upright, even when you put them in the fridge when you're getting ready to drink them. So when you're pouring your beer, you're gonna, obviously you're gonna pour it like normal. But once you get towards the end, stop pouring. You're gonna leave approximately half an inch of beer at the bottom of your bottle, and you're gonna see that yeast sediment that's collected at the bottom, and it just keeps it out of your glass, so you're not drinking that yeast. You can, it's not gonna kill you, but if you want a nice clear and beer that tastes how it's supposed to taste without yeast in it, try and keep that yeast out of it. You're also going to find out with this hobby of home brewing, you can go relatively cheap and you can go crazy spending money. A lot of good investment in your money if you want to put a little money into it and get your money's worth out of it. Invest in fermentation equipment. Extract brewing your beers will come out great. There's not an issue with doing extract brewing. You don't need to get a Brewzilla or claw hammer system like I have, especially when you first start. You got to make sure you really enjoy this. I've been brewing for like 25 years. I'm going to try and put up some photographs of my old equipment. I don't no longer have that equipment. I sold it. But, you know, you can go with the cooler and a propane burner and a large kettle, and you can brew all grain that way. And then you can step up into maybe some of the electric systems that, like the Clawhammer, the Brewzilla. There's a number of different systems out there that are electric. I've been doing this for 25 years, and just about a year and a half ago, I bought my first all-electric brew system. So I've been, you know, in the garage brewing with propane burner and a cooler that I use for my mash tun. And I probably did that for 7 or 8 years. And then before that, it was extract. And I did extract probably a good, 10 years of just doing extract brewing. So just, if you got a lot of money to spend, don't mind spending on a hobby that you're just getting into, then that's fine. But the record keeping is what's going to make you a good brewer. Make sure you want to be consistent, and you want to make sure you know what your flaws are. So keep record of what you're doing, and then you'll know where you're making mistakes if you find out that something's not coming out right. So just keep good records. And then when you get to a process that your beers are coming out consistently good, stay with that process. So that's all I got for you guys. I got a lot of editing to do, so we're going to get back to that. So cheers, and we'll talk to you later. Peace out.